afternoon here in Lagos, Nigeria. Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics on Channels Television. I'm Kaido Kikilu. Well, here's our lineup for today. Nigerian Air Force helicopter reportedly crashes in Kaduna State in the early hours of today, according to locals in the Igabi local government area. The Air Force is yet to officially react, as it's reported to have cordoned off the area. The death toll from the suicide bombings in Gwoza in Borno State, northeast Nigeria, increases as security operatives apprehend some other suspected bombers who are reported to have claimed that there may be more suicide bombers out there in Gwoza. The Labour Party presidential candidate in the 2023 election, Mr. Peter Obi, asks leaders to grow a conscience and prioritize the development of medical and educational infrastructure in the country. Well, let's begin with top stories we're following at this time. A helicopter belonging to the Nigerian Air Force has reportedly crashed in the Igabi local government area of Kaduna State. The management of the Nigerian Air Force is yet to make an official statement over the incident, but locals told Channels Television that the helicopter crashed in the early hours of today at Taime village near Rigachikun in the Igabi local government area. The community is very close to the headquarters of the Nigerian Air Force Training Center, Mando, in the Igabi local government area. Now, following the incident, a team of Air Force personnel from the Nigerian Air Force Air Training Center and 401 Flying School are said to have cordoned off the scene to secure the area for emergency rescue operations and to possibly also investigate the cause of the crash. And now to Borno State in Nigeria's northeast region, where residents are coming to terms with the multiple suicide bombings that hit Gwoza local government area over the weekend. The death toll has now increased to 22 and 44 others injured as victims have been taken to or being treated at the Borno Specialist Hospital in the state. Now, 2 female suicide bombers have been apprehended, and according to the Secretary of Gwoza Local Government Council, Mrs. Fatima Musa, the suicide bombers came in their large numbers, mostly women. Some bombs did not explode, and a few bombers were arrested, but the exact number is unknown.
Units of the State Specialist Hospital, Maiduguri, Borno State. They have to attend to victims of multiple suicide bombings with varying traumatic injuries, all inflicted by multiple explosions. First at a wedding ceremony in Gwoza, and then another inside the town. Who feels it, knows it, as these victims are in so much pain, they lack the energy to cry. Undeterred by the number of the injured and extent of the injury, the hospital personnel are hands-on to ensure that they receive urgent medical treatment.
As you can see, we brought about 31 victims of this bomb blast. We brought some yesterday, just about 12, who are not, they are still under treatment, who are not yet verified to be well. And they brought that one, but there was a curfew yesterday to this effect. But as of now, I think the situation is very tense because they are just discovering some of the victims affected. Now, as of yesterday, most of these victims were not known to be affected because they thought it was only maybe a few injuries. So maybe first aid treatments will take care of some of these cases. But as we can see, it is very severe. So we just hope they will get well.
These victims can't speak as the pains are excruciating, but the secretary of the local government shares what she knows about the bombing.
We can't say exactly how it happened because it was just all of the blues, from a wedding. There was a wedding, and at the wedding, well, the first bomb blast exploded, and after that explosion, in the course of the burials and packing of the corpses, the second bomb exploded, and there was another one at a distance. That is all in the same street, but at a distance.
Some unanswered questions still hang in the air. The coming days will bring more clarity as a more comprehensive death toll, as well as updates of the injured, will hopefully emerge.
Now, the president has strongly condemned the Gwoza attacks, describing them as desperate acts of terror and a clear manifestation of pressure mounted against terrorists and the success achieved in degrading their capacity to launch offensives. In a statement issued by the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Ajuri Ngelale, President Bola Tinubu vows that the purveyors of wanton violence will be punished, and these cowardly attacks are only but an isolated episode, as his government will not allow the nation to slither into an era of fear, tears, sorrow, and blood. A part of a statement reads, "The President declares that the purveyors of wanton violence shall have a certain encounter with justice, and that these cowardly attacks are only but an isolated episode, as government will not allow the nation to slither into an era of fears, tears, sorrow, and blood." End of quote. Now, while expressing his condolences, the President assures Nigerians that his administration is taking necessary measures to secure lives and property, emphasizing that efforts will be redoubled to ensure that those who trouble the nation are stopped. Well, former Senator Shehu Sani is of the opinion that the bombing in Borno State was orchestrated by Boko Haram. Mr. Sani is also calling on the federal government and security agencies and Nigerians as a whole to remain vigilant. As he says, this incident may serve as a wake-up call to the nation. He was speaking on our political program, Sunday Politics.
Now, under Jonathan, the cities was unsafe, and then under Buhari, the rural areas now became unsafe. And it's no more about bombing, but it's about kidnapping, it's about killings, it's about slaughtering of farmers and attacking schools. And that was what was the case for 8 years. And then with the coming of this administration, it's what they inherited, but coming from a state, which is Kaduna State, if I'm going to make example, I will make example with my own very state. And all I know that in the last more than 1 year, there has been one school, which was a primary school in Kuriga, that was attacked in Chukwu local government. So for us, when I say that the situation is comparatively better now than it used to be, I back it up with statistics that we have on the ground. The bombing in Borno is a continuation of the terror activities of the Boko Haram group. And I believe that if you look at the local governments that have been under occupation or domination by terror groups, you will see that Gwoza at least has remained, while other local governments are liberated. I have seen the governor of Borno State most times visiting some of these local governments, and I have seen also the fact that some of these terror kingpins, in most cases, were eliminated, but you can't end terrorism within 24 hours. Some of these attacks by terror groups are something we have to live with until the time which we are going to succeed. So it is a message to us that vigilance and continuous effort by our security forces is very important, and we shouldn't be complacent to think that when there is silence, it means everything is gone.
Well, staying with security, the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tarid Lagbaja, is again asking Nigerians to team up with the Nigerian Army and other security agencies to combat terrorists and all enemies of the Nigerian state. Speaking in Abuja at a special Thanksgiving service to commemorate the 2024 Nigerian Army Day celebration, General Lagbaja says the Army will continue to live up to the expectations of Nigerians to defend the nation's territorial integrity. He, however, applauds the support of the federal government and other security agencies in tackling all forms of security threats being experienced in the country.
In about 161 years, the Nigerian army has experienced wars, low-intensity conflicts, armed military operations other than war, such as peacekeeping, peace enforcement, armed military aid through civil authority engagements. Nigeria today boasts of a force that is globally reckoned with, a force renowned for its tenacity and adaptability, a force that is victory-focused, understands the underlying spiritual component of the fighting power, and ascribes battle successes to God, as conspicuously captured by its motto, "Victory is from God alone." I believe it is in recognition of the place of thankfulness to God for the past year and the need to seek divine guidance and blessings for a new year that our forefathers initiated the nascent religious activities aside from other celebration programs.
Well, the Chief of Army Staff speaking there. But let's get some more insight into what we saw play out over the weekend in Borno State and what security operatives and even medical responders are trying to grapple with right now. We're joined on the program by Captain Bishop Johnson, retired, is, well, of course, a retired U.S. Army captain, joins us virtually on the program this afternoon. You're welcome to the program, Captain Johnson.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'd like us to begin with imminent threat, as it has been described. So 2 of the suspected suicide bombers arrested, and it appears that there may be more out there, judging from some of the accounts said to have been credited to the arrested suspected suicide bombers. So there's an imminent threat on our hands. And I wonder for you, how do you expect things to be coordinated now, such that we don't now keep having string of suicide bombings every day in Gwoza and maybe in other parts?
Okay. I hope it's not going to be an everyday occurrence. But what happened goes a long way to let us know how difficult it is to completely eradicate, terror groups such as Boko Haram or ISWAP, whichever one the case may be. To deal with terrorism is not an overnight something. There is no doubt that over the years, the Nigerian government had made some progress in degrading the potency of those terror groups. But unfortunately, because you're dealing with people you don't even know, who could be anybody, who could be bedded in normal communities, it makes it much more difficult to be able to completely uproot and eradicate terror organizations. There was a research done by RAND Corporation of America that suggests that to completely eliminate terrorism takes on average about 20 years to get rid of it completely. I hope that is not the case with Nigeria, but it's such a complicated situation. And considering the deficit of infrastructure in terms of how to police and secure societies that had existed in Nigeria for over the years, it will be much more difficult for us to deal with it. But the good news is that progress has been made, and I hope that some of those things that led to this progress are sustained. As for the issue of still having some of those suicide bombers out there based on the information, I expect that to be the case. I've had press release by the spokesperson of Mr. President saying that it's an isolated case. I hope that is what is as an isolated case. But I have to caution and advise that those who are responsible for operating our security infrastructures do not take this as an isolated case. As from what you have just said, from the interview from those that were arrested, there are still some of them out there. So it won't be an isolated case. If we treat it as an isolated case, it will only be a matter of time before you have a repeat of what happened on Saturday.
Well, this fight against terrorism, extremism, even banditry has cost the nation quite a lot in terms of, security operatives, the army, generally military, even the police and others, and also cost us, people who are civilians in that sense. So we've actually lost a lot, and that's not even to talk about the financial aspect of all this. And at the heart of this really is extremism, people brainwashing others, promising them martyrdom or whatever. So is there a global standard for combating terrorism, extremism, all of these things we're seeing play out that maybe Nigeria can copy from and localize it? But what is a global standard for dealing with these issues?
Well, unfortunately, there is no textbook or manual on how to deal with terrorism, across the globe. Each particular situation, has its own peculiarities that country has to study, and they apply whatever measure is necessary to be able to deal with it. Terrorism is not uniform. They all have different ideology and different agenda. The only thing that may seem, uniform is their modus operandi, which is to try to kill as many people as possible to be able to draw enough attention to themselves. However, there are a few things that can be learned from what happened in other places, such as, how to gather intelligence, how to, decipher the people behind it, who are the sponsors, trace how they, get funding, because all these things requires funding for them to be able to plan and execute them. And so if we can broaden our intelligence capacity, be able to pick up, noises here and there and make sense out of those noises, we'll be able to learn from what other people have been doing in so many other places. But even at that, you still discover that even in those other places across the globe, they still haven't eradicated terror completely like that. It's a very difficult situation. Unfortunately, that is the situation that we find ourselves. So my advice is that, yes, there are some lessons to be drawn from what is happening in other places. We can draw those lessons, but we cannot ignore the local peculiarity of our own very situation, and they study it and try to combine what we have learned internationally from our local and the unique and peculiar situation.
Well, it's quite a conundrum, really. But I'd like to just flip to the effect of this. So there is what an attack such as this is meant to do, really. From the side of those who have planned the attack, there's the kind of mindset they want to foist on the public, the government, by way of propaganda or what have you. There is that on the one hand. Sadly, this has cost the lives of people. But is there a way to outsmart them? And I'm maybe borrowing a cue for government, those in authority, such that they properly compartmentalize this. They understand what this is, and then they deal with it from the propaganda side, the mentality side. Because now this has caused a lot of fear. People are asking, are we back to the pre-2015 era where we used to see suicide bombings here and there? So how do you expect government to approach this in terms of messaging and posturing?
Well, I think the government has already started trying not to create panic in the society. You read in your prelude, you read the statement from the presidency, from his spokesperson, that is an isolated incident. That message is targeted, to calm nerves, not to create unnecessary panic amongst the citizenry. That is one way of trying to reduce or limit the effect of the propaganda that the terror group is trying to achieve. Basically, that's how they thrive. They thrive by drawing attention to themselves. And all it takes is just one incident of this nature, and they will be successful in getting the attention that they are looking for. As we speak right now, most media houses, both here in Nigeria and across the globe, have picked up that incident, and it's all over the globe on the news. And so this, for them, it is successful. Now, for us, including the media also has to work with the government in trying to ensure that they don't give unnecessary and undue attention to that incident. However, it's a very delicate balance that the media has to strike, because in one hand, you have to inform and educate the people on what is going on, and at the same time, you have to be able to manage that information in a way that you are not giving credence to the core objective of the terror group. It's a delicate and a difficult balance to strike. However, it can be done. And so I'm also thinking that the government also have to elicit help of third parties and private citizens to be out there trying to reassure the people that, look, yes, this incident is truly an isolated one, and that the government is in full and total control of the situation.
Right.
But at the same time, we can't see it as an isolated incident strategically. Behind the scenes, security operatives must be working hard to prevent a recurrence of this type of incident. Because one thing is for us to say is an isolated incident in this particular case. If such a thing would happen again in the future, it will useless that argument that it's an isolated incident. You see the level of coordination that was involved. It was a highly coordinated attack. You strike at the wedding ceremony, kill people, and then they go to where they are mourning those people, and then they strike again. And then they go to the hospital where the injured might have been transferred to, and then they strike again. So you can see the planning and the coordination that is involved. With that kind of level of complexity in planning and execution, you will see that it's not that much of an isolated incident as we're looking at it.
As you said, we as a media will do our jobs, inform the public. At least we owe the public that and give them the truth. But of course, always present all of the sides. And that's why we're having you to basically walk through these incidents. But I'd like to thank you so much. We've been speaking with Captain Bishop Johnson, retired U.S. Army captain, joining us virtually from Owerri, the Mustate capital. Thank you for your time on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Right, so let's bring you an update to our lead story. Well, the Nigerian Air Force has now released a statement regarding the reported crash in the early hours of today in Kaduna State. And the report says, contrary to reports on social media that a helicopter crashed in Kaduna earlier today, the Nigerian Air Force says that no helicopter crash occurred, but instead an unmanned aerial vehicle experienced a mishap after takeoff for a mission at a location near Rumji village, about 15 kilometers from the base. And says since it is an unmanned vehicle, there were no casualties on board or on the ground. Says preliminary investigation has since commenced to ascertain what may have caused the mishap. And the statement is asking Nigerians to rest assured that this minor setback will not in any way impinge on all ongoing operations. Statement is according to the Air Vice Marshal Edward Gapquet, who's the Director of Public Relations and Information at the Nigerian Air Force. Again, the Nigerian Air Force has now released a statement on the reported crash in Kaduna State, saying that an unmanned aerial vehicle was what crashed and not a helicopter, as reports by those around the area had it, and no casualty has been recorded in that one. Well, let's talk politics now. Former presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, says the country's leaders must prioritize the development of medical and educational infrastructure in order to cater to the welfare of the citizens. Mr. Obi, who was speaking in Port Harcourt during the graduation of the Jesuit Memorial College, says Nigerian leaders must grow a conscience and do right by the citizens.
Today in Nigeria, we have a situation where our teaching hospitals are collapsing. Our national hospital is collapsing. If you see the president in America become sick, he goes to an ordinary hospital. If you see the prime minister in Britain become sick, he goes to an ordinary hospital, because they are people of conscience. But here, our national hospital is collapsing. The equipment is going down. The budget this year for it is less than 2 billion. But the budget to keep a particular building where the occupants don't go to hospital here is costing us 20-something billion now. Because we don't have conscience, and people of competence. We don't have a national library. Every country of the world have a national library. Nigeria as a country does not have a national library. Our budget this year for our national library is 980 million naira. But the budget of National Assembly Library is 15 billion. Because we have no conscience.
Well, let's now bring you more stories now. The Election Transparency Advocacy Coalition, a civil society group, is asking politicians in Kogi State who lost the 2023 governorship election to stop pouring their frustration on the Independent National Electoral Commission through what it called sponsoring campaigns of calumny against the commission over conduct of the election. Addressing journalists in Abuja after Solidarity March to the headquarters of INEC, the joint coordinators of the group, Oluchi Anabude and Peter Ogwoke, criticized politicians whom they claim are sore losers in the state.
It's good to be very mature. And I like that knowledge.
You will recall that the commission conducted governorship election last year in Kogi State. That election was won by the APC and was so declared by the commission. Since that time, politicians from states who promote atrocities, ethnic agenda, but have been all over the places. And we are here today to declare that INEC is trying its best as a commission set up to conduct election in Nigeria.
Well, Professor of Forensic Criminology, Professor Abiola Allen, is of the opinion that to solve the issues of insecurity plaguing the nation, Nigeria's leaders should look to inclusive policing as opposed to the widely advised community policing model. Speaking in an interview with Channels Television, Professor Allen says inclusive policing will be a more effective solution to Nigeria's security problems and is calling on the government to give the model more attention.
Nigeria is ripe for community policing. I can tell you that they are right. But I have also come up with inclusive policing, which is a better strategy than community policing. Why? Community policing will not work in Northwest or Northeast. Why would it not work? What's community policing? It's based on three things. One, the police want to partner with the public. So you have community partnership, okay? And then two, you have the change in the structure. In other words, from the vertical to horizontal structure. The divisional police officers have more power. They become the local police chief, all right? And then you have the third leg is the problem solving through a strategy called SARA, S-A-R-A. That's community policing. But who wants to partner with the police in Northeast or Northwest? Inclusive policing goes beyond community policing because it brings everybody together, okay? And then inclusive policing looks at not just policing, not just community policing, it also looks at various other 8 policing strategies and then bring the people together so that, for me, in Nigeria today, inclusive policing, Inclupol is the solution.
Well, there you have it. That's the package for this afternoon. Thank you for watching. I'm Kayode Okikele. Goodbye.